guys start making the anchors, like the late 1800s. I'm just gonna say a motherfucker. You gotta climb to the top of a mountain to get it, and then catch these like things that don't want to be caught. And so a lot of times, a lot of the wool they would just find because like they shed. So there's a season that you can go get it, but it was really hard to get. So the symbol of a blanket in Coast Salish culture and in most native cultures, it's like the most valuable present you can get. It's like this thing that like only the elders, when you go to a potlatch or a ceremony, to get given a blanket is to extend your life or to give life force to someone else, because it's what keeps you warm, it weathers the storm. Blankets are still a big part of the native culture today. Pendleton is most famous for kind of using native motifs and designs in their blankets. There's also a great local guy, Nootsack tribe, neighboring tribe to the Lummi, Louis Gong, who's just opened 8th generation in the Pike Place Market, which is a native-owned, native designed blanket company, which is really unique, kind of because for years the Pendleton Empire has made built it on the backs of these native, like Navajo, traditional Navajo blankets. The blankets I'll be working on are Coast Salish. I am a Lummi tribal member and a Coast Salish native. The blankets, the panels I'd like to make will be made of cane. And so you can see this red stripe that goes down. There's this one red woven stitch. And so what the natives would do around here, because the red dye was really hard to get, when the Hudson Bay Blanket Company moved to the Pacific Northwest and Willamette Valley, they would bring these, they had access to great dyes, and they would make these red blankets. Well, the natives here would use these woolen dogs and mountain goat wool to make these blankets, and they would get one of these red blankets and completely disassemble it, and then reweave it into their blankets to add these red spun wool. You know, so it's conventional sheep's wool woven into the mountain goat wool blankets. More traditionally now, all the contemporary Coast Salish blankets are made with just traditional sheep shorn wool. So I have pulled quite a bit of cane. We're going to do some cane labs. This won't be today. Hopefully we can start on it tomorrow. We'll do some tests for it today. What I'll have the team start with today is some of these reef net anchors or fishing anchors, like you can see that I have in the exhibit upstairs. Those are powdered, powder on the surface. There's a hole that's gone through. Some of them, I'd like to experiment on some of them without the hole, with just this groove kind of put into them so that I can work. I'm kind of working on the lashing. You can see in the anchor that's in the exhibition, there's a cedar bark rope. And cedar bark is a great material that was kind of just all-encompassing for the tribes around here. They really lived on the sea and the salmon, and the cedar bark for their clothing, shelter, just about everything. You can use the cedar as a great wood because it naturally repels insects and fungus, and it's keeps them off out of your cedar chest if you have your grandma's cedar trunk. So cedar was such a great part of the people around here, and you can see it, they're just majestic trees. 2 weeks of the year, in the early spring, the trees, the water starts to flow underneath the subcambium layer, and that's when you can separate the bark from the tree. And so you'll kind of carve a little niche in the bottom, and you'll strip the bark up. A big one will go up about 60 feet, and you'll kind of get these really long strips of cedar bark, and you're kind of working on the inner bark. There's an outer bark, inner bark, subcambium layer, and then the tree trunk itself. And you kind of want that sweet little inner, in-between middle bark. And what that does is, so during that 2 weeks of the year when the water is flowing, it allows you to strip these large pieces off of the tree, which otherwise wouldn't come off, but you've got to wait a year to use it. So you have to cure it for a year, and it will sit in a cool, dry space for a year. So just this last week, because obviously I'm getting as prepared as I can for this residency, I've been out in the woods running around stripping cedar bark, because a year from now I'll need some cedar bark. There's going to be some samples up there on the floor kind of what they do. And they would use cedar and willow and nettle. The most recent project I did with it is at the Bellevue Art Museum. I made a reef net model, which was Similar, a lot of this work will be going, I have a show coming in September, well, August 1st in Blue Rain in Santa Fe. That's August 13th, September 5th at Stonington Gallery in Pioneer Square. And then hopefully most of these works will be going toward the panel job or the blanket job that I hope to work on, will be going to the Museum of Northwest Art in LaConner. I have a solo show in 2020 in May. And as an independent artist, somebody who shows mostly in galleries, you know, and there's this pedestal sort of thing that glass kind of lives on. It's either on the wall or on a pedestal. Taking on a big space like that is a huge opportunity, like this Bellevue show, to work on my installation work. When you're having a show like that, it's not in the gallery. It's great exposure, but having the shows like that, there's no, I'm probably gonna go bankrupt doing it, but you know, you gotta live once, you gotta push your chips in, and you'd be pissed if you didn't, right? So I'm getting ready, and so hopefully a lot of the work that we're doing in this show will go to that show. I'm gonna be working on a big school of salmon. I hope to make salmon while I'm here. I need 35 salmon for a wall, and I can make like 3 in a day. So yeah, I might work on some smaller ones. I might have the team make some of those depending on, I've got a couple different avenues, so I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna do the whole time. I do know they're gonna start with the anchors today. I'll be setting up blanket panels tonight, and then possibly we will just make fish. Yeah, having this installation is, I'm gonna work on some more fishing. I'm working on a river netting, another reef net sort of model. The anchors today will eventually get cedar attached to them. That's kind of something that I'll be working on. But so the 3, I mean, and in between, in the interim, I'll probably be making a bear. There might be an owl or a totem or something small that kind of, you know, I kind of have to map out. It's got to be flexible with what is, you know, the time frame and the end of the day and lunch and that sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of brush on some of the other works that I've made because I've got a couple different shows coming up, but primarily this show at Mona is my primary concern. You know, again, it is a big thing to have for an independent artist who's typically showing in galleries to have a museum show where nothing's for sale. They're not trying to sell your work when it's at a museum typically. And you do generate exposure, but to fill, I have the main gallery, the Benaroya gallery, and then the auxiliary. So I'm going to curate some weavers. There's a long hallway in the museum. It's part of the side gallery, and it's really, I mean, to put pedestals in it would be cumbersome, so I'm going to work on wall pieces. And I have contacted, and I guess I'm curating a bunch of woven work from other sailors' weavers. Yeah, so that's it. These are, like I said, this is just some of the pictures. You can see the dog, that's from a painting. This dog, the existence of this dog was in dispute. Like Captain Cook spoke about it when they came around the Olympic Peninsula. There's a lot of history. When the dog was shorn, you could pick the whole fleece up at once. It was like a lamb, you know, it was like a sheep. But again, this dog was just instantly bred out. So all the islands around all the reservations here, or the traditional tribal lands, not necessarily the reservations, because those are kind of like obscure to where the people are now located. My family, Lummi tribe, Lochtimish, they're from the San Juan Islands. And so the first village of the Lummi people is actually on San Juan Island, which is now called English Camp. And it's a lot of that, like, when we come to your town, we build our church on your church sort of thing. So the English Camp, there's the Battle of the Pig between Britain and the United States. So that history kind of supersedes the Lummi history of being on San Juan Island. But so outside all these islands, if you go to Ozette, Macau, they all have what's called Dog Island. And they'll have these tiny little islands where they would keep these dogs so that they wouldn't breed with the other dogs because they were so valuable. You know, this is the other way they could supplement their mountain goat wool, which is a better fleece or a better flax than the dog hair, because dogs technically is a hair, it's a fur, it's not technically like a wool the same way, but it was a high quality hair. So that's what we're going to work on today to get started. You can see some of these are some of the examples. We've got some grays, I've got some reds, I've got a bunch of white cane pulled. We're going to do some cane roll-ups. Again, that will be tomorrow. Today we'll be focusing on the anchors. You saw the one that I have in the exhibit. I might like to try some different shapes. You know, it's taken me a while. This team is, you know, it's so great to come to a place like this where everybody's so skilled that I can just kind of like point to a picture and kind of trust that they're going to go off and attack this thing that, you know, there's a learning curve with anything that you make, and a lot of these things I've made my way, and I'm excited to see how these guys will do it their way. You know, it's a big privilege to be here. I'm honored to be here. Aishka, see him at the Tacoma Museum of Glass. I think it's a great privilege, and I'm very honored to be here. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please shoot. I will be running around at a low-key manic the whole time I'm here. Yeah, thanks again for your time. Questions? Tacos today? Is that what we're doing? Yeah. Talk about lunch, that's what you do. Awesome.